Going beyond thinking means going beyond objects. It means not being so drawn into objects. It means being drawn into yourself, who you really are. We become so over obsessive with objects that we lose a sense of our presence, the subject, our awareness, who we are. We don't constantly ask ourselves who we are. We don't dwell there. We don't, stay there. We experience it momentarily throughout our life. And it's because we're so caught up in this physical world. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are, and we only perceive things from our level of understanding and perception. But there is only one way to see life, and that's with pure awareness. Awareness happens first, thoughts are secondary. If I remain as the subject, which is awareness, I perceive reality as it is, not as I am. I witness everything. I'm not saying I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, or I'm going through this or I'm going through that. I ask myself, who is feeling this? Who is aware that I'm feeling this? Who is perceiving this? I know my mind is talking, I know my mind is chattering, but who is it that sees these emotions within me, that sees these thoughts within me? And who is experiencing this? Remaining as awareness means turning your attention to yourself. Just as how we turn our attention to problems and we feed those problems and they become bigger. What do you think happens when you draw your attention to yourself? You find yourself in the seat of self. You find yourself not being touched by anything. You still experience everything, but you know who you are at heart. You don't get lost in the sauce. You remain in stillness. When you lose touch with inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. And that couldn't be any more true. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Why? Because you identify with everything that's going on the outside that's constantly changing. There is no stillness. There is no center of yourself. You're going wherever the wind takes you. And no wind is favorable because you have no direction. But you remain in stillness. You know who you are and you know where you have to return to. Try meditating on yourself for 30 minutes. Try, being aware of being aware, Just observe yourself and see how your energy goes back to yourself. Don't get lost in all these distractions that the outside world gives us because they're endless. They come in different forms and, people are here to trigger you and show you what you need to heal, what you need to grow on, and what you need to do to be, in a better state of consciousness and in a better state for yourself. Get fascinated with getting to know yourself, perceiving your own awareness, being aware of it, staying focused. So yourself could get stronger. You could be more clear about who you are and what you are and why you're here and what you want to do. You're not going to find yourself by asking your mind, oh mind, what should I do? Is this job good for me? Is this where I want to stay or be? What should I do? We put all these things in our minds and our minds doesn't know. It really doesn't know. Not only do you become more aware and more clear on things, but you become your inner boss. You're not a victim to your inner world, and you're not a victim to the outer world either. You're in sync with who you are and what other place to be but there. Why get to know all these objects when you don't know the subject or when you don't know who you are? Isn't it better to understand the manual of life, the manual of who you are by direct experience than try to figure out all these problems in the outside world and act like, you know, you're sure of yourself, it's a trap we put ourselves in because the mind changes its perceptions and convictions all the time. It doesn't have no, it's not one-minded unless we make it one-minded. But our consciousness is impersonal. So if our consciousness is impersonal, it doesn't need to be right or wrong, happy or sad. It's neutral and it's clear. It's always clear. It's at peace. I've thought myself out of happiness a million times, but not once into it. Think about that. The mind is a tool. Stop perceiving the mind and listening to everything the mind has to say if you don't, voluntarily want to listen to anybody else tell you that. Imagine what the mind is telling you, somebody else tells you all the time. At one point or another, you'll get irritated. You'll be like, all right, that's it. But the mind, even when it's wrong, it changes its perspective and it doesn't admit it's wrong. It just wants to keep on talking. You know? There's also mind traps that we get into where our minds want us to think in the same way. It wants us to, return to the same chemicals in our body that trigger the same emotions and lead to the same outcomes. We have to stop and remain, like we literally have to stop watering these thoughts that are not necessary for everyday life. Half of the thoughts we think are pointless. They're stupid. They're unnecessary. They don't help us at all. You know? We think and we think and we think and we think. Yeah, we're just sinking ourselves in a deeper hole because we're misperceiving everything. And to stay in the seat of self is to stay as who you are. To clear your mind and say, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. People are getting cars, people are doing this, people are getting jobs, people are doing all these worldly things that, you feel like they represent who you are. Man, know who you are. Then all those things can come after. But it's no point in getting all these things and then ending up like all these people that are like, oh, okay, that's it. I have this, I have this. I'm really no different than I was yesterday. But yeah, who am I? You know what I mean? Like, people think when they get these things, their sense of self is just gonna be in a whole nother world. But not knowing, they could fulfill that need in an enormous way. Now, it's like sitting on $1 billion and the $1 billion is there, but you don't believe it's there. But it's still there. Become aware of that. Not even $1 billion. Knowing who you are is worth more than anything because not only do you become a light, but you become a light unto others. You become a light unto yourself, and if you could get yourself out of the darkness, you could get other people out of the darkness.